Hello everyone, hope you are doing well. So today we are going to understand handling custom exception in Java. Okay, how to handle the custom exception and what are the custom exception, what are the benefit of it, that all we will understand. Okay, so without wasting the time, let's go to the IntelliJ. And here we'll understand, let's say first I am creating a one class. Let me close all the tab. Okay, so let me create a new package like handling custom exception. It's a package name. Okay, inside that let me create a new class, select test. Okay, and here I will write like suppose main method. So I will give you two scenario here. Okay, with the help of that scenario we will understand why custom exception is required. So we know that, let's say we have a two scenario like age. If I will ask age of the person, right, age can be negative, no, right? So age cannot be less than 0, right? Age cannot be less than 0. Cannot be less than 0, right? So age will be either 0 or positive, right? Same like suppose we want to cast a vote. I want to cast a vote, so I do decide one age like suppose 18, right? So if age is below 18, right, if age is below 18, candidate is not eligible for vote. Candidate not eligible for cast the vote. So these two scenarios I have, with the help of these two scenarios we do understand why custom exception is required. Okay, so first of all let me do one thing. Here I'm writing this code. Okay, age cannot be 0. Okay, let's do on it. Okay, so first I will do what? I will take a one age, okay, and I will keep some value on it. Age equal to suppose 10. Okay, and here I will write one condition: if age is less than 0, right? So simply we can write system.out.println, and here I will say like age cannot be 0. Age cannot be negative. Cannot be negative. Okay. Now else I will display the age. If it is not, out.println, and here I will display the age. Age equal to plus age, and I will write some other things as well, system.out.println, and here I will put like suppose finish. So what does happen here? Suppose if I will put here age -1, then what happen? So age -1, that time it should directly come to this particular conditional statement, age less than equal to 0, right? So age is -1 less than 0, it will directly say age cannot be 0, as well as it will display age equal to age as well as finish. So if I am checking this condition, right, if I am checking this condition, then what happen? This conditional statement is executing, right, as well as the remaining statement is also executing. So that is not a right way to do the check of this kind of things, right? So what I will do here, I will make one exception class which do behave like a predefined exception class, right? What is the advantage of it? If I will create custom exception, if I will handle it here, right, that time the program will terminate at this point itself. So this time, this way which I did here, right, that is not a right way. That is not a right way. So how to create in this scenario? First of all, I have to create one custom exception. So how to create custom exception? First of all, you have to create a new class and give a name of the class. So I will give a name like age non-negative exception, something like that. Age not negative exception. Okay, and every class which will be behave as a custom exception, right? I think here is extra exception only, right? So let me refactor that, rename exception exception. Okay, so whichever class you want to create as an exception class, that will extend runtime exception. What they will extend? Runtime exception. What happened? Extends runtime exception, and inside that I will create one constructor, right? Age non-negative exception, and here I will pass one string message, string str, or like message msg, and here I will pass super with msg. Okay, age non-negative exception is one class, exception class, which is extending runtime exception, and here I am keeping what? One constructor, right? I am keeping one constructor which is taking one message. So here this class is behaving as an exception class. This class is behaving as an exception class, and this exception class which I created, it is a checked exception or unchecked exception. So we have seen two categories, right? Checked and unchecked. So remember that if it is extending the runtime exception, that means it is behaving as a unchecked exception only. And normally when do we create that custom exception, that we do create unchecked only. I will tell you why. Because it is not mandatory to handle it, right? I mean, we don't have to handle it always, because unchecked exception or the exception which is not need to handle with the try catch block, right? So this, as per my requirement, I have given the name of this particular class, and I extended the runtime exception, right? And here I kept the constructor, and constructor is taking one message which is calling that super. So what happen, right? Whenever it will come some message, and it will directly send to the parent class. It will directly send to the parent class, which is the runtime exception. So how do we handle it here? So in this test, instead of doing the code like that only, right? What I will do here, instead of sysout, what I will do, I will write a throw keyword, throw new, what? Age non-negative exception, and here I will pass the message, age cannot be 0. Age cannot be 0. Now understand that difference between previous scenario and this scenario. In the previous scenario, what happened, right? If I was writing the sysout, it was executing the sysout as well as it was executing this two line also. But here what happened, right? It will directly throw the exception, age non-negative exception, and it will say age cannot be 0. After that, nothing will execute. So whenever you will create your own exception, and if you will throw it from any place, right? Then what happened, right? After that, nothing will execute, because this will be the last line of the execution, and after that the program will terminate abnormally. That means your program will terminate actually. Nothing will execute after it. So we can forcefully terminate our code. Terminate the execution of the code. So in this case, if I will run this file, okay, here directly it is coming, right, with negative, and it is saying that age non-negative exception, directly it is saying age cannot be 0, and then I am getting the exception only, nothing is executing, right? If I will give here suppose like 10, then what happen? It will display age equal to 10 with finish statement. That means it is displaying all twos statement here. So if it is required, it does execute. If it is not required, let's say this is the previous scenario. The previous scenario, what? I was using system.out.println, and I was simply writing age cannot be 0, something like that, right? Age cannot be 0. Then what happened, right, in this scenario? It will give me Okay, here it is a positive only, right? Let me keep it negative. See, it is giving age cannot be 0, as well as it is displaying age -10 and finish also. If age is negative, right, I don't want to execute anything. So that is the difference between these two. And throw, we know, right, throw is thus used to raise the exception. So here, if it is condition will not satisfy, it will directly raise the exception, which could be age non-negative exception, right? Age non-negative exception, and then it will simply say that raise the exception, nothing will execute. So the exception class which will be having a custom exception is like age non-negative exception. So whenever you will work on the project, right, depending on your scenario, you can create a number of custom exception classes, and that exception classes will must extend runtime exception, right? If it is extending the runtime exception, that means this class is behaving like a custom exception class, okay? And that may throw exception as well. So understand, the previous we have given the runtime, right? Now let's say with exception only. So you can see here this time it will give me error actually. Why? It is asking me, we have to handle it because it is a checked exception, right? So when I will keep this exception, that time it will be a checked exception. So whenever you will handle it, right, I will call it, you have to handle it. So let's do with the throws keyword. So when you will keep throws keyword, because throws keyword is also used to handle the exception, right? That time this is not required. So always remember, custom exception we do 99% create a unchecked only, because this throws we don't want to be kept extra actually. So always go with the extend runtime exception. If it is required, you can go with the exception also. So that time this throws keyword is not required. This throws keyword is not required. Hope you understand what are the custom exception. So custom exception are the exception which created by the developer itself, right? So here which class is custom exception class? That is this class. So age non-negative exception, that is the one class, right, which is extending the runtime exception. And here we do keep a one constructor which will always call the parent class constructor only, right? So whenever you want to work with custom exception, first you have to create your own exception class, Second things, we have to use it wherever is required. So these two things you have to keep in your mind. First, you have to create your own exception class, and second, you have to use it at any place, right? When you're working with a boot framework, right, like a Spring Boot framework, that time this part will remain same whenever you are handling that, or whenever you are creating the custom exception there, right, or handling that, right? So that time this part will remain same, but extra things also add on it because there is a framework. But here we are learning with core Java, right? So that is enough for that. If someone will ask in interview how to create the custom exception, so simple answer that first we have to create one class that will either extend the runtime exception or exception. So you can give the complete difference as well. If it is extending the runtime exception, that will be unchecked exception. If it is extending the exception, that time it will be a checked exception. Simple. And wherever is want, we can use them using the throw keyword. So throw keyword does use to raise the exception. So we do case throw with new exception name, and we can pass some message as an argument there. So that is all about the custom exception, guys. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.